Right. So the reason I've wanted to have you on like lots of times, but when I think of shooters that I've met around the country, it's a very small group of people that are like not only well versed, but well versed and have the depth of experience um, to talk about their experiences and be able to like get into the nitty gritty. And whenever I think of anything, like I think of you, and we've seen each other all over the country. Um,
Yeah, we
we've
have.
shot individual matches, team matches. Um, we've been on TV. We've like just hung out and done random
Yeah.
shit. And but what fascinates me about you not only is how long you've been involved in shooting and competing, but the fact that you've been really successful at disciplines that I think like I don't have much experience in three gun, but in field shooting, I shoot carbines. And so I feel like, okay, I'm a good carbine shooter, but I'm thinking it at a pace that's much slower and targets that are small. So and having a system that you can use at distance and up close, it's fascinating, and you can do both. You've gone to competition dynamics matches and other precision gas gun matches, team matches that are a little more methodical, require more wind, more distance, more thought, but then you're also wildly successful at three gun shooting. And so I wanted to talk to you about carbines and their applications and how you've kind of progressed over the years, because there aren't that many people I can't really think of shooters that can perform at that high level across all those disciplines.
Yeah.
I could think of you. You know what I mean?
Well,
So,
yeah.
the
No, I appreciate that. It's something that's always been kind of a lifelong goal for me. Because I started shooting really, really young, and when you said somebody that's well rounded, that's just because I'm old, right? No, I'm 52. I'm not in the shape that you're in. That's for dang sure. I found that out after surviving man. You're a freaking beast, and I should probably take better care of myself. But I do pride myself in taking the time to learn a discipline and to get very, very proficient with it. So for me, it was a big learning experience. Now, starting off, uh, shooting NRA high power, which really no one does anymore. I mean, it's almost a dying sport. It's still out there, and there are still clubs that are trying to do that discipline. But that was back in the day when it was all run by DCM, which is the Division of Civil Marksmanship. It was started by the government to promote marksmanship among the civilians. And typically that match was shot with an M1 Garand. And if you shot a match, and I think you had to shoot like two matches, you would just turn in your scores. And from the military, from the armory, so you would actually just get the next one off the shelf, M1 Garand or Garand, however you want to say it. And you could get it for like, I think back in the day, it was like $250. Wouldn't you love to have like 10 of those? They would let you do it once. And, that was shooting across the course positional. You were shooting 200 yards, 300, and 600 iron sights only. And I attribute, I guess, my ability to do stuff today to that, because, it was the fundamentals of positional shooting with iron sights. At 2 and 300, that was for time. And, at 60 seconds, we'll see, at 200 yards, it was 10 rounds offhand at 200. And then you had to do 200 yards, and it was from standing to sitting, 10 rounds, but you had to incorporate a magazine change. So you had a magazine of 2, magazine of 8. Then you went to 300 yards, and it was standing to prone. You had 70 seconds, 2 magazines. And then you went 600 yards, and that was 20 rounds, 20 minutes slow fire. But if you didn't know how to read wind, you weren't hitting these targets, and you're learning everything about how the sun affects the target and what you're seeing. And so I learned slow and methodical. That's what I had to do back then. That's what everybody did. And I took that all the way up to high master. My goal was to try to get distinguished. Never got enough leg points to do that, but I chased that for years as far as doing that type of competition. But man, it was so slow and boring, Chris. It was horrible. It was horrible. Now that sport has since been revived a little bit because it was dying so much. What ended up happening is they started allowing 4-power optics
Oh,
because so many of the older people, they were just like, I can't see my sights anymore. I can't see my front sight, and, we're doing everything from the sight black and the shooting jackets and all that. So that's really where I cut my teeth in, I guess, competition type shooting. I had been shooting some pistols and stuff before then, but I mean, that taught me a lot. I mean, a whole lot. I would go in the summers, I would go to Camp Lejeune, and we would actually train with the Marine Corps with the rifle range detachment on base. We would actually stay in the barracks. And so I learned a lot at a really young age about long guns. And it seemed like most of the people I encountered back then, it's like you either shot a long gun or you shot a pistol. You didn't find many people that could do both or both well. And I don't want to just give you a general there, but that's true. I mean, back in those days, and I even see it today on some of these, just with some of the matches that you and I shoot together and everything else, you can have a really, really good rifleman, but man, you put a pistol in his hand, he goes through 2 mags, and it's not that they're not good with it. It's just, they just haven't devoted the time to it. So I've really tried to move from discipline to discipline throughout the years, everything from silhouette, small bore, to now I'm doing, the rimfire, PRS and NRL type matches. But then I do the 3-gun. 3-gun I kind of got away from for a little bit. A big goal was to win nationals. In 2018, I won nationals, 3-gun nation nationals, and the TAC Irons division. And so that was kind of like a bucket list, check box. And then I started getting back into long range because that's what I've always loved. And I think, you and I met up, it's been years and years ago at the CD match, and we just had a lot of common interests and stuff. But I've had to learn how to temper 3-gun or long range shooting, or like the CD match where you're doing kind of both. You've got to know what that limit is. You can shoot too fast to where you get sloppy, but you also don't want to go so slow that you run out of time. There's this big balancing act, and it's really hard to convey. Especially in a podcast, it's really hard to convey that, but you've got to know what that upper limit is. I don't know, anything you want to add to that? I mean, it's just because you can shoot one platform. Let's say you're a master pistol shooter. That doesn't mean you're going to be a good rifle shooter. You've got to put in the time and effort. And I don't think one conveys directly over to the other. You can be a great rifleman, be a horrible pistol shot. And just because you can shoot a bolt gun really well, there is a little bit of a learning curve when you start shooting a gasser.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm curious about, as you've talked about this, is being able to, transition how your eyes or your mind are operating when you're thinking speed or you're thinking precision, but yet understanding those limits. Like, how did you develop the ability to know the difference and perform on demand? Because I see a lot of shooters default to really slow, but
Yeah,
but your default is staying quick, and you can understand the difference between, I'm going to get hits fast and then I'm going to get an accurate hit, but you don't go slow, you go enough to make that hit, right? And
correct. And that's
how have you
that's
trained that?
that's a great question. And where this epiphany happened for me is I was actually talking to Clint Upchurch. And for those that know him, you know who he is. If not, he used to be a team Colt shooter. Unbelievable pistol shot. I mean, unbelievable everything. Clint Upchurch is, and not name dropping, he's kind of local to the area. I've seen him shoot. I've shot a lot of matches with him. And back in the day when he shot, he was a force to be reckoned with. And one day, Clint Upchurch and I, we were shooting, it was either regionals or nationals. And we were talking. He was like, you try to shoot too accurately. I asked him, I was like, what do I need to do to get to that next level? He goes, you need to know where your limit is. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you can shoot all the A's you want. He goes, but the way these games are built, you can get a little sloppy and increase, your speed. And, if you're getting, and I'm not going to say A zone, B zone, because typically the matches that you and I shoot, Chris, we don't have those. It's, usually it's like two on the paper, or sometimes they'll do zones. It depends on the type of match you're shooting, But he was like, you really need to shoot faster than you are comfortable with and see how it ends up. And so because for me, it was all about accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. And he's like, you're shooting your pistol too slow. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, got to shoot faster. And I'm like, I don't want to shoot any faster. I'm not going to be able to get A's. Oh, don't worry about it. See what that limit is. And as I started pushing that limit, I started finding out that I could shoot quite a bit faster with an acceptable level of, I'm going to call it inaccuracy. And I the gains were huge. Well, there's a time and place for everything. And I think in your mind, you have to look at size of target, distance of target, or distance to target, as well as platform that you're shooting. I pride myself in my pistol shooting, because I'm the guy that will take the longer shots with the pistol if they give an option of one with the rifle or two with the pistol. That happens quite a bit in 3-gun. They'll have a target that'll be 80 or 100 yards out. And when you come up to it, they'll say you can do 2 with rifle here, or 1 with rifle or 2 with pistol. But it is a game, Chris, and you got to figure out, okay, if I'm already here, but I've already abandoned my rifle in this bucket that was back, do I want to come all the way down here to take this one rifle shot, or dump the rifle back there and just get 2 hits with the pistol? That's not the time to go pack, 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 pack. I mean, you really got to slow it down. Doom, boom, 2 hits, you're done. And you saved all that time. And and the thing about trying to stay somewhat in shape is anytime you're moving in a stage, that's free time. That's costing you nothing, right? So move with purpose. But when you get to where you're going, if it's time to take that precision shot, in your mind, tell yourself, settle down, take your shot. I'm not one of those that will walk to some place so I don't get my heart rate up when I take these shots. I'll sprint over to that location, take that breath, settle in, and yeah, your heart might be pounding and everything else, but you've done enough of that shooting. It's a timing thing, and being able to understand what your limit is huge. That's the only way I can explain it. And I believe, doing all the different disciplines, not just being a master of, that whole saying or the adage, being well-rounded with all these different platforms just makes you a better shooter all the way around, period. I don't know if that really answers the question, but that's the only way I can really kind of convey doing that. And I love these, these team matches, these physical matches, but I can honestly say this, I will never do like a sniper adventure challenge. And you're really good at that, but you have a level of fitness that is second to none. So it's not that I can't do it. It's not something that excites me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I get it. I mean, right, there's that whole spectrum, but it's nice to be able to know, like, man, I got pretty close to, or this isn't really for me, or this is, and explore that. But the things that you have kind of settled on, which are massively diverse, you've had an extremely high level of performance. And so, like, let's say, somebody that is good at precision wants to go to try a 3-gun. How would you kind of advise them to start testing their limits and getting comfortable with the idea of, what fundamentals do you maintain, and what fundamentals are you kind of giving up for acceptable accuracy with more speed? Like, how would you kind of nudge somebody like, hey, look, you're you can shoot well slow, but that's not going to cut it in this game. And then vice versa. How would you take a 3-gun shooter that wants to try, let's say they wanted to do, whatever, like a gas gun PRS match, or quantified performance, or something like that? How would you say, look, for you to be competitive here, this needs to stop and this needs to start?
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
Okay, so that's a fair question. I will tell you, I think there's there can be a lot of negative connotation to three gun, and I believe it just depends on what region of the country you're in. So I'm not, I won't shoot three gun matches that have primarily base stages. That doesn't excite me. I'm not a base stage type person. I really like natural terrain three gun, and we have a lot of that on the East Coast. And yes, I have shot some matches out west. You know, I shot nationals out there. We were, you know, I think one was in Oklahoma, which isn't West West, but then I also shot like the PCSL championships. I think Max Leo Grandis puts that on. And it was a great match, but there was a lot. It was a good mixture. It was probably 50 and 50 on that. But I'm not a big fan of base stages. Base stages, I kind of gravitate towards those things that I really like to do. And one of the reasons I like natural terrain is because they typically stretch those out and add a distance element to it. Well, like yourself, you're pretty decent at long range. I consider myself decent at long range. So that's something that can help separate you from the pack. You might not be the best pistol shot, but then it's also going to help that you're pretty good at rifle. So you're going to gain points there, whereas, you know, some other competitor might gain points on the pistol. The hardest thing with three gun is managing all three weapons platforms and knowing them like the back of your hand. It can be daunting. I'm not going to mention any names, but there is someone that lives out west that's wanting to get into three gun, and he's done a couple of events. He's done a couple of two gun events, and actually I was on the phone with him right prior to this podcast. And there's a big match coming up in 2 weeks. It's the Tar Heel, the American Defense Manufacturing. It's a big 3-day three gun event, and it's natural terrain. 40 targets are beyond 200 yards, going out to about 700 normally. So that's right down my alley because they got the precision rifle element, not just taking your AR and shooting it at 50 yards, you know, or 100 yards. I mean, you're having to shoot some DMR precision type stuff here. That changes my platform too, because now I'm not going to shoot a 16. I'm going to shoot an 18-inch three gun rifle. Is it going to move as fast in the bays? No, but you know, life is give and take. I want to get that extra little velocity, so I've got a little better ballistics, especially so that I'm going 1-for-1 on the longer range steals. Because three gun is a little, you know, it's funny. It's like you don't see a lot of crossover. I don't know a lot of precision rifle shooters that shoot a lot of three gun or vice versa. It's typically one or the other. It's kind of like, I think you and I had this conversation, Chris. Why don't we see more PRS shooters, like strictly these top level PRS shooters shooting a CD or a competition dynamics match? There's a little bit of bleed over, but not a lot. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. It's
Why is
definitely
that?
like, yeah, it's hard to know.
I'm going
I
to get a
mean,
little
you
deep
know,
on the subject here.
oh yeah, I think
Um,
it's just, you know, personally, I think it's just so specialized and they have enough competitions that to get points, they don't have the time to look outside of it. And that's what I would say is that it's a league, they need points. It's very, very specialized to the point where they'll do good, but they won't win or they won't trophy, and that might not be worth it. That would be my guess as to why most of them don't
yeah,
venture into that realm. Although some people have tried some NRL hunters, that's not quite that's not CD level. The only guy that I know that has performed well in the past at both is Tate Streeter, and he's only
yep,
done Steel Safari, right? So Steel
got it.
Safari is the exception because you know it's the closest to that, but not. I mean, he's done Team Safari, um, and stuff. So you see some of that, but you also see the performance starting to drop as you drift away from that specialization
Yeah,
um, aspect. But I would say that you know but you're not a dedicated PRS shooter.
no,
You know,
I'm
and
learning.
neither am I. Yeah, neither. Yeah, and I'm not either. But I'll go do them, and I'd like to do more. You know, when my body is healed. That was the plan this year, was to kind of explore that a little bit more. But they are so specialized that um, you know it's scary because if you invest time in another platform or another style, you kind of lose a little bit of your edge in
Yeah,
the one that you're disciplined in. And there's a lot of competition now in the PRS world that, man, if you screw up a few shots, you might go from top 10 to top 30, right?
Yes, yes. And the other thing that I was giving a lot of thought, maybe I'm going out on a limb here. I think I am going out on a limb. That's a fact. I think it has to deal with a person's personality. A lot of PRS shooters that I've met, they're very methodical. They're given the yardages, they're given the distances, they can see it, they can plan ahead. But now you take that same shooter. I'm not saying all of them, but what I've noticed is some of your top level PRS guys, and I'm not naming anybody, just guys that I've seen, they'll go out and shoot, a sniper's unknown or a blind stage match, and all of a sudden everything's changed. Everything's under the clock. I don't know where the targets are. I have to find the targets. I have to laze the target. I have to communicate with my teammate, what I'm doing, where I'm doing it, and you're all trying to manage the time. And some people that I've talked to said they do not like that at all. It's almost like an added stress that they don't want to deal with. And for some people, I think some people feed off that, and other people are turned off by that. I think it's a personality thing, or that person's personality. Do they like this or they don't like that? You either do or you don't. It's crazy. I've seen some long range shooters do a 3-gun match. They're like, oh, I hate this. I'm never going to do this again in my life. And it's like, why? And I think it's just that unknown, or like you're saying, I don't have time to dedicate it to get good at this. And it takes a lot of dedication, a lot of time, especially that blasted shotgun.
Yeah. I mean, as people get more specialized, it's hard. But on the other hand, like, there are some people that are good at cross discipline, and I appreciate that way more than somebody. I mean, it's cool to see somebody do something like, there's a dude in PRS that just like cleaned a whole match, like a 2-day match, never dropped a shot, and it's cool to hear about things like that. It's amazing to hear about stuff like that. But on the other hand, somebody that can go across, I'm more like I'm more interested in kind of like having a high level, but across a lot, to kind of see what are people doing and what are the ideas of performance. And so but I'm gonna like kind of derail this just a little bit and add, or not derail, I'm gonna add to this, like, because you mentioned like, okay, well, you're gonna go from a 16-inch rifle to an 18-inch rifle, and we're talking about gas guns. How do you assess, because we both have cobalt kinetics,
and I love them. We both shoot for cobalt,
and they perform. And I mean, everything has issues when you're in the dirt and you're in the field, but how do you go about selecting? Like, what's your process for, especially watching your YouTube channel? You've got a lot of different firearms. You're able, all their manual of arms, you know how to operate them, and then you just basically just start shooting. And what is it that you're looking for in a carbine when you're selecting it for these different applications?
Okay, that's a fair question. So, the thing is if there's going to be engagements that are going to be further than, let's say, well, it depends on the size targets. If I'm shooting full size IPSCs, then a 16-inch is fine. But if they're going to add a precision element to it, where I'm going to be engaged in, let's say 12-inch circles or 12-inch squares, and they're going to place these things at 500 and 600 yards, I don't want to sling a couple rounds at it. I want to sling one round at it and go on to the next one. Time is money when it comes to a 3-gun that has distance targets. I mean, I've seen guys unload D60s on a couple targets, and that's the other thing too. You have to know when to say when. If you've slung 3 rounds at this target and you didn't hit it, go to the next one and take your miss. At least you won't get a failure to engage. You'll get a double whammy. I've seen guys with 5 more long range targets to engage, and they will unload a 30-round mag on one steel because they don't want this steel to win, right? And they just can't let it go. And then now all of a sudden they get 5 misses as well as 5 failure to engages. So they have compounded the issue. And that was really, really hard to accept. And I don't do that often, but there are times if I've slung 3, maybe I'll sling 2 more at it, but that's enough. Go to the next target. That target just was not your day today to hit that target. And You just have to accept that. Now, like with PRS, engage the target with 1 round, hit or miss. You don't have any choice. You either hit it or you miss it, right? Unless it's 2. 3-gun,
Right,
hey,
right.
you got all this ammo. You can go to war on this. This is what we call it. Going to war. Don't go to war on a target. Because that will really, really cost you. So if the target engagements are smaller and further, I will probably go with an 18. I won't choose a 20. A 20 is what I would go with on like a DMR match or like a CD match. I'm going to go with something that, is going to give me the better ballistics. I'm not going to be shooting. I shoot 55 grains in the bay. As a rule of thumb, Chris, if I'm shooting a 3-gun, now you got to remember the round counts are really high on these majors. Like if it's like this one coming up, I think it's like 250 rifle. And you say, well, that's not much. I think it's 250 rifle. You don't have any misses. So it can get really crazy. I know last year shotgun, I think I took like 300 and something rounds. And at the last day, we were like, holy crud, we're running low. 9mm, I think we had 400 plus rounds each. There was like 5 of us that went to this match last year. And on the last day, guys were like, dude, I'm almost out of ammunition. And it's like, well, I've got some extra. Everybody brings extras always. So the round counts are crazy, crazy high. So I don't want to burn through ammo. I want to get first round impacts if I can at distance. So CD match, if I'm going to shoot a 6 arc or something as a secondary, I want to have a 20-inch barrel or so, maybe a 22. If it's a 3-gun that has, longer range engagements, I will shoot at 18-inch. And then if it's a mostly bay or if it's a local match where they don't have the distance, I'll definitely shoot like a 16 or even something shorter because you can maneuver it so much quicker. And this is a game of tenths of seconds. I mean, it really is. Excuse me. And so to answer what I was going to say before, I only shoot 55 grains from 200 and in, and then anything beyond that, I'm 69 grain. The only time I shoot 77s is if it is a DMR style, if I'm not shooting a different caliber, but typically I'm shooting a 75 or 77 grain, or if there's a spinner where you need the extra energy to get that thing spun over. I'm very selective, and I use different color magazines for whatever type of ammunition I'm running. It's really important in 3-gun.
Wow, I didn't think of the separating that out, and then you would have to have separate dope, or you would know your holds differently for the different ammo.
I will run like 2 dope charts, or I'll go ahead and do the math and figure out, okay, all this is going to be 55. I don't want to be slinging, Black Hill 77 grain at 10 yards, right? So if I know that I'm going to be shooting, because I don't want to add any magazine changes if I don't have to. So if I do the math and I say, all right, there's 10 paper targets here, 2 rounds each, that's going to be 20 rounds. All right, so I should be transitioning, if I'm planning my mag changes so that I'm going up to that 69 or 77 grain when I get to the long range stage. Or, if it's less than that, maybe I'll put 15 55s on there because that's all paper. For me, I got to look at the money side of it too. I can't sling very, very expensive ammunition at paper. I'm not going to do it. I'm too cheap that way.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that, but it makes a lot of sense to just figure out what the offset might be, or if you're shooting paper or just close steel, like shit, you just get cheap ammo and just use that, and then use the other stuff. How at these matches when you're shooting, like even at CD matches, my bolt guns, I just kind of wipe out the chamber, just kind of keep them clean because it's dusty, but I don't clean them like crazy. But gas guns usually require more maintenance. What kind of maintenance are you doing? Do you have to do maintenance between stages, or do you do maintenance at the end of the day? How are you keeping it running?
At every single competition that I can probably tell you that I've ever shot, I clean every day at the end of the day in the hotel room or in the camper or whatever I'm doing, whatever venue I'm at. And that's crazy because you're always having to either find cleaning supplies or take cleaning supplies with you if possible. But, you've got all this time invested in airplane, hotel, all of that. I don't want to hurt myself because I was lazy and I want to just get in bed and watch TV. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clean and maintain that firearm, because you're right. When you come to the West, it's completely different than here on the East Coast. Here we deal with mud. or we deal with rain, but we're not dealing with dust. We don't get that dust that you guys get. And that's really, really hard on equipment, sand and dust. And so anytime, end of the day, cleaning chambers, punching the bore. I'm not saying you're going through a decopper process or any of that other stuff, but you're just maintaining it, getting everything clean, re-oiling it so that you're good the next day. And I typically, I'm going to knock on wood on this one, I rarely have any problems. Ever since I've aligned with Cobalt this year, I have yet to have a single malfunction with any AR during any match since I've switched to Cobalt. Now, the old Cobalt, I couldn't say that because remember, I used to shoot for Cobalt back in the day, back when they did the little space gun thing. And, Aaron, who's the new owner of Cobalt, really turned that company around and really started building more purpose-built duty style ARs. And I have been thrilled to death. I've had zero issues. I shot some big majors last year, everything from Memorial, which I ended up getting, I'd already left. I was like, I didn't do too well. I ended up taking high LE on that one. And it was like, your equipment has to run. It has to run. And so, I shoot for Team MPA now. I'm on their team for their pistol team. I'm running the DS9 pistol, ran it all last season, zero issues, zero malfunctions. And that's just shooting factory ammo. I really, these days, I don't hand load much anymore except for PRS. I just don't have the time, and the opportunities presented itself just aligning with different companies to be able to get a reduced price on ammunition. So, your time is money. And so it's really, really hard to justify loading 9mm when you can just buy it and the price is right.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, man, I love the precision gas gun thing, and I'm really excited that it seems like it's kind of coming back into into a lot of the areas that we're interested in. And I think some of it is that the rifle systems are getting better, and the ammo's getting better, and the velocities are getting higher, and they're starting to. I could see light where we'll be able to be side by side against a bolt gun, if we get that velocity bump or the bullet weight bump or something like that. But I'm really looking forward to that. And the last match that I shot, heck yeah. I mean, the last two matches that I did with gas guns were the Burris Optics and then the Steel Safari. And
yeah,
I just keep telling myself, man, these are just right there almost. Competition dynamics, some of the targets can be kind of ridiculously small, like 2/10 wide. And with the gas gun and unlimited rounds, it's really easy to get sucked into like, oh shit, I'm going to hit it, but yeah, but other targets aren't, so I definitely know what you mean about going to war on a target. Like, you empty a whole magazine trying to hit a 2/10 target. And it's like, well, fuck, I don't even think I need to make a correction. I just need to keep shooting, and eventually it's like, bang, because, but 800, 600 to 800 yards and it's 2/10 wide, and you're like, man, I just got to get this thing. I think that when that velocity bump happens, or they get, the arc, I haven't spent a lot of time shooting the arc, but if you can get that velocity closer to 2,800, shoot, I don't see why not, because my 223, I mean, I could do 10-shot groups, from a fixed position and have a half-inch group. I mean, the precision is there, the reliability, the consistency, the repeatability. It's just that, the after 600 yards, I can't go shoulder to shoulder with a bolt gun.
Now, the last 2 years at the CD match, I have shot 6 ARC, and I have been very impressed with it. I do start to see it fall off because I don't hand load 6 ARC. I'm just getting factory ammunition. And what I've seen is, and I heard the comment a couple times from different folks, they're like, dude, that's a primary, secondary rifle. I mean, it was literally going 1 for 1. I was like, there's no way I'm going to drop any points on this. I mean, this thing is just shooting that well. But also the systems have changed. What I've seen is since the release of the 6 ARC, you're starting to see not rifle length gas systems, but you're seeing rifle +1, rifle +2. You're starting to see 20, 22-inch barrels, in some case 24. but I do notice that that round starts. You said 600 with the 223. I think the arc is good 800 yards, and then it starts to kind of fall off in a gasser. Even though we've made impacts out to a mile with the 6 arc, and we regularly have shot these at 12 to 1400 yards, it is not built for that. I want to say that right on the record right now. You're losing too much, but yeah, you can rein anything in. I mean, we regularly shoot. We shoot. Not even 2 hours ago, we were shooting 22s out to 600 yards. And people are like, "What?" And we're shooting on these little 8-inch steels at 600. Just because it's good training, good for wind calls and everything, and it's just something fun to do. But I think if I know there's going to be targets beyond that 800-yard mark, yeah, it's losing it at that point. It's bolt gun time.
Heck yeah, yeah. But I get it. Like, man, it's fun to try to hit something that's out of the favorable range. But I try to think of ranges in terms of like absolute hit probability. Like
Yes.
inside of 600 yards with the way I shoot. Like if I miss, it was me. It has nothing to do with the rifle. After that,
Yeah.
it could be ballistics that are causing the miss, and it still could be me, but I don't want to pick a system where those overlap. So I don't know. So you say, look, yeah, after 600 yards, I'm going to go to something else. And it's not that you can't hit it, but you might miss. And it's like, man, I don't want to have a system where there's, well, it could be ballistics and it could be you. I want it to be, inside of 1,000 yards, it's just me. Inside of 1,200 yards, it's just me. And I feel like the gas systems, man, 600 yards it's just me. After 600 yards, man, I'm just hesitant. Like you said, like if it cost me $2,000 to fly to a match, I don't want to do it with a system that is like, well, it might be ballistics. No way, man. That's an expensive experiment, and I could waste a lot more ammo just playing at home. But
Exactly.
I do think that
it gets expensive. Shooting these competitions, it's a commitment because you're going to spend a lot of money. With the company that I work for, I am able to shoot a lot of matches for free as far as the entry fees and whatnot. Just because of sponsorships and donations to the prize table. And of course, you'll get a spot or two depending on the dollar amount that the company is donating, and that helps add to the prize table. But it's a lot of commitment because then the company is like, "Hey, are you shooting this? We're sponsoring this match." And I'm like, man, I'm shooting 3 matches in a row every weekend, and I'm flying and doing this, and it has gotten to be rather hectic. This year, I'm actually going to slow down and not shoot. I'm going to be very, very selective about which types of matches I do. I'm still going to shoot, big 3-gun major events. I'll still shoot some big PRS major events. Plan is to shoot gap grind again this year. If I can ever help it, I never miss a CD match. Team Steel Safari. It's just so much fun. Just the folks, meeting up with everybody and catching up. It's just a great, great atmosphere. And so I really, that's probably the one that I look forward to more than any other match throughout the year. Even though we might do horribly, I love that match.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, the whole experience is awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's probably, that and the Burris Team Challenge are probably my 2 favorite, hands down.
Yeah,
and then
Burris is fun as well.
Yeah, they're like the same but different, right?
Yeah. Yeah, one's got a little more physical element to it,
Right. But if you just look at just the shooting stages without the rules, you're like, yeah, those are pretty similar. And then a couple tweaks, right? Just small tweaks of the rules, and they're completely different and wildly fun in different ways. Yeah, I think it's amazing. Now, I wanted to try to focus mostly on your gas gun stuff, but while you were saying that, you mentioned 22s, and you have a lot of experience and success with 22s. And I always like to ask people about how the crossover between rimfire and centerfire goes. Like, what is the training benefit that you see the most from using and getting familiar with rimfires for a centerfire shooter, or is there not?
Okay, so I really wondered about this myself because when PRS Rimfire started coming on strong, we were traveling all over trying to get points and, you know, shooting every match we could find. And it is a lot of fun. I mean, a whole lot of fun. I mean, you're going to dial more than you've ever dialed with your centerfire rifle. You know, it's like today, I think it was at 600 yards, we were at 38 mils at 600. Now, 38 mils. You're not going to do that with your centerfire rifle. You know, I mean, for most people, you're never ever going to even come close to that. You know, you can shoot a mile. Let's see, just off the top of my head, I think with like a 6.5 Creedmoor or 6 Creedmoor on the mile, you're going to be at 20 something mils with like a 20 MOA mount. So this, you know, just add another 18 mils to that. And now wind is huge. I mean, the slightest puff of wind, and now you're 3 mils off target, you know, and it's like, what? It's crazy. I remember I shot regionals one year, and I think I was holding 8 mils of wind. It was crazy. I mean, you're like, wait, how can you do that? There's not enough in your reticle. Well, you got to dial a bunch of it and still hold some. You know, you'll dial like 5 and hold 3 on it, you know. So, you know, because you still have to have that usable reticle that you can do your holds. It is a big training tool because the time management on all the movement, that's where you're going to see the biggest benefit. Okay, so if you're just getting into PRS, and like I said, here's a newbie getting into PRS, you're going to time out on, let's just say there's 10 stages. You're going to probably time out on none of them. Okay, especially if there's a lot of movement. Let's say 2 shots, 5 positions, or heaven forbid, they do 1 shot, 10 positions, which that's not unheard of. You're going to see this at PRS. When I shot the Hornady PRC, I think they had 1 shot, 14 positions, and almost everybody timed out at about the 10th position. There were very few that made it beyond that. And I mean, sure, you can get to 14 and miss them all, but if you're really getting them as you're going, what you're going to learn from the PRS rimfire is you're just reinforcing all of your time, getting those shots off, getting on the target quickly, not hunting by overpowering. It's a great way to train. The only downside that I can see with the rimfire PRS NRL 22X is that I have seen that if you do a ton of that, you kind of lose a little bit of your recoil management when you go back to your centerfire. Now, I don't mean shooting a little bit here. I'm talking about you immerse yourself, you shoot 6 matches in a row of rimfire, and then all of a sudden you're going to shoot a PRS match next weekend. Your recoil management and your follow up, because you're just so used to going and nothing moves. You know, the rifles are 23 pounds and it's a 22 rimfire. That's the only downside. I do see a lot of guys trying to mimic the exact same setup, you know, almost the exact same action, the same chassis and all of that. And I think it's only a benefit, not a detriment, other than the recoil management.
Gotcha.
It's fun.
And how about, like, do you think that I understand that the wind obviously is going to, but can you take that wind that you learn with a rimfire and use that with a centerfire? I'm not convinced it's that. I've heard people say like, okay, this is like 800 yards or this is like 1,000, but the fact that you have to hold wind, I get it. But learning how to read wind and translate that to centerfire, I'm still kind of on the fence about, because I can't visualize that myself.
Yeah, I don't think there's a direct correlation, Chris. I can tell you have to pay attention more. I mean, if you start to feel the slightest on your face, or you start to see a little bit of grass starting to move, you better account for that, because holding left edge and sending it will not cut it. You know, a lot of these, we're only talking, let's say 300 yards. So it's like today, 300 yards, and today was very calm. As soon as I left work, I wanted to get a little bit of training in because I couldn't decide which rifle I want to shoot this weekend. I know that sounds bad, but doing the videos and all that, you really want to have different types of platforms. So almost all of my rifles that are custom rifles are built by Desert Precision Gunworks. Kenneth E builds one heck of a rifle. But, you know, am I going to shoot the CZ this weekend? Am I going to shoot the Voodoo? Am I going to shoot the Rimex? And yeah, I get it, you know, first world problems. But no, it's different with a channel because people want to see their platform and know more about it. And so I have variety. But today we were shooting at 300 yards. We were holding 1.8 mils at 300, and it was calm. I mean, it was calm wind. At the line at 300, you felt zero wind. You couldn't even feel it on your face. Okay. And so one of the guys that I was shooting with was like, dude, isn't that crazy? He goes, we had no wind here. And down there, we're having to hold 1.8 mils. And I'm like, that's 22. It's the way it works. So I think you're a little more conscientious of the wind that otherwise you wouldn't really pay that much attention to with centerfire because it's negligible. I mean, you know, you're slinging at 2,800, 2,900 feet a second, and you got this bullet that's barely doing 1,080 feet per second, 1080. That's the magic number I've seen. Almost everybody shoots subsonic ammo. You know, typically it's going to be something like, you know, Lapua Center X. It really depends on your budget, but most people kind of stick with Lapua Center X or like Ely Match. Yeah, there's some guys running 10X and some running, you know, Exacta or Midas, but typically your hardcore shooters are going to be shooting, you know, Ely Match or Lapua Center X. And it's just as expensive. Don't kid yourself that you're going to get into rimfire, you know, PRS rimfire or this ELR rimfire and think you're going to save a bunch of money. You're not, because you're still going to have about, it depends on the person. I mean, you know, I did a video recently where I just did a production rifle, production CZ, and shot a match with it. And I compared it to a guy that had, you know, an $8,000 setup. Now, ultimately it's going to come down to the shooter, but that little CZ that was production division did really, really well at that match. There's a reason why I did that video was to see, you know, it's not going to be what all you've got in it, but what I do see is a lot of guys want to have the exact same scope that they're running on the other one. So if they've got one Night Force ATAC 7 to 35, they want that on the Rimfire. Well, there goes another $3,500. Then they want the same spur mount. They want the same chassis. I mean, you're just doubling everything. And on top of that, you're not shooting CCI standard velocity. You're shooting, you know, this other ammunition that's $13 for a box of 50. Do you know how fast you can go through 50, 22 long rifle? So
right.
It gets expensive. Yeah. At the beginning of every year for the last 3 years, typically, once I find a good lot, I'll usually get about, this is going to sound so bad, but I usually buy about 10,000 rounds of that same lot to get me through that year. That will usually get me through the season.
Yeah, man, that's a lot of ammo. But I can see that. Like, man, it's just so fun to send rounds.
That's also about today's rate. The last 10,000 I bought, we're looking at about $2,600 for rimfire. So when you put it in that perspective, you're not really saving yourself any money, but what you are getting is trigger time and hopefully good trigger time, you know?
Right. That's a lot of repetition.
It is.
If you're mindful,
hopefully good repetition.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you could really reinforce bad things fast. Or you could be mindful. And actually, like, I don't know if you know Boyd Linder, but he does a lot of rimfire and air gun stuff in Utah, and we know each other. And he said something very similar that to you, and you guys have both been massively successful in rimfire stuff, that it really turned on his senses, and he pays a lot of attention to it. And that when that carries over to the center fire, his mindfulness stays there. And he also says that his recoil management does suffer, and then he has to consciously go back to that, but he maintains his kind of awareness. And so he can perform really well at centerfire too. And it's cool that, you know, two high performers on different parts of the country are saying the same thing. Like, it really exposes your senses. And if you're aware of that, that'll spill into other areas of shooting. And then with your mindfulness about tempo and acceptable accuracy with gas gun, I think, you know, it's really pointing towards, you know, just that conscious awareness of what's being asked of you and how to manage that time and pay attention to the things that are important. and the things that are important are different in different contexts, I guess. And that
Yeah.
sounds so obvious, but it's not, because you can forget all of that and just think, I just got to shoot it.
Yeah, I just got to shoot it. I am going to go on record and say something that's going to be very controversial, but it's a fact.
I love
People argue
controversy.
with this. Yeah, this is controversial. PRS rimfire and NRL 22X rimfire is considerably easier than PRS centerfire competition. Period.
Interesting.
End of
I haven't
story.
done either.
Okay.
How are they different?
Okay. So what I have seen is it takes just a little bit. Okay, so this is the biggest thing. When you look at the scale of the size targets in relationship to the distance, while you are taking 22 long rifle out to these extended ranges, who would have thought that, a couple, 10 years ago that guys are going to be competing with standard 22 long rifle subsonic ammunition and hitting targets out to 400 and 500 yards, right? Now, most of your rimfire matches usually keep the target somewhere around 350 and in. And I don't think it's so much because of the difficulty. I think it's because of finding a way to really, really get good hit indicators. Because beyond about 350, magneto speeds aren't really the best for always registering those impacts, especially when a match director tries to use centerfire rifle steel. I mean, you need to use thin steel because it won't even register it. And so at those kind of distances on heavy steel, that 22 doesn't even make, I mean, you might hear the report, but the problem is during a match, you have so many different things going on with shots and gongs and everything else. You're not going to be able to tell that that was the impact. And you can't always spot that because you're not getting much of a visual reference. So most match directors will keep their rimfire matches at 350 and in. What I've also seen is when you start to get beyond 200 yards, if you really looked at the scale of the size of the targets, at 200 yards, typically it's going to be a 66% IPSC. When they get into 350-ish, I mean, I've seen targets as big as full-size IPSCs. So now you can miss all of those too if you don't have good wind calls. But if you look at that distance in relationship to a PRS match, which, you can maybe shoot out to 1,000, 1,200, sometimes 1,300 yards. There was one last weekend out west, and one of the stages they were shooting out to 1,500. But the targets, when you look at the scale, the centerfire is much harder. Right? It's much harder. When I shot the Altus match a couple weeks ago, you're shooting at targets. I mean, some of these targets were, 600-700 yards, and you're shooting on something that's a minute and a half. Well, look at the scale on what you'd be doing with 22. So I think 22 is considerably easier. And I've never, and it's not just me, it's also some of the guys that I shoot with, never been able to just get into a sport, a discipline, and trophy so much. You never see that in anything. Everything else you have to work really, really hard at. But some of the guys that I shoot with, we'll go to these matches and it's like, dang, man, you got second place. Oh, you got third place. And it's not that we're that good. It's just I think it's that much easier. It really is.
That's interesting, but it's fun, and I think that's really
fun.
important. Yeah.
And you don't have to wear ears, and you don't have a headache at the end of the day, and you can hold a conversation with someone. It is a lot of fun, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and more popular. And in just the last 3 years of me doing this, Voodoo came onto the scene really hard. I'm starting to see a lot of changes in the firearms platforms. What you're seeing is what everybody used to compete with an 18 or a 20-inch barrel. Now everybody's going into 24s and 26-inch barrels. And,
Really?
I even did a video on that. Yeah. So when you get beyond 20 inches on a 22, you start to slow the bullet down. But we're not chasing velocity here. What we're trying to get is stability and repeatability. First round cold bore, less shift. And what we've seen is these longer barrels, like 24 inchers and 22s, 23s, they are not as picky with the ammunition. I mean,
Interesting.
yeah, I've had some guns, man, you got to go through 5 different lots just to find something that groups halfway decently, And I have sent some of my rifles off to Lapua to the testing center, and they tunnel test it and everything else. They say, well, this is the best lot number of the ammunition that we're offering right now. But a lot of this, and this is good information, a lot of this is based off of, most of your Olympic shooters, those guys aren't shooting 18 and 20-inch barrels. They're shooting 24, 26-inch barrels. And this we can't prove, but it's almost like accelerating that bullet and then slowing it down either stabilizes it or makes it less picky on ammunition. And usually it can shoot more ammunition better than getting something that's an 18-inch. And you have to go through, like I said, 5-6 different lots. Because you
Yeah, I
can't,
mean, I've heard
you're not going to
that so
handle it.
much. Right. I've heard people say so often, like, barrels, it'll slow down at some point, and then it never crossed my mind. Although I've also heard, oh yeah, we want to shoot subsonic. We want to shoot subsonic. So it never crossed my mind that, like, well, shit, slow it down. Like, it could be supersonic, but by the time it leaves the barrel, it's not anymore, or
Yeah,
something like that. Like, if you're trying to
yeah,
hit
yeah,
1080, at 1080, 1060, 1050, because you're already subsonic, you do want precision and repeatability. And,
yeah,
unlike the center fire, where often, I mean, you need a certain amount of velocity. It's debatable in term. I mean, I think you even mentioned it in one of your videos recently that, people used to be trying to like max out the speed limit. And now they've fallen back to
yep,
that 2800.
yep.
But still, like, I did an experiment where I was like, okay, well, how far back from 28 can I get? And I found that kind of cliff where, you can't slow down. It's not an infinite, like, back off and you'll be able to see more at some point. Ballistically, now you're just at a massive disadvantage. But 2800,
Yes,
you have the ballistics and you have the visibility and the less recoil. But with rimfire, it's almost the opposite, right? Because you need that consistency. So wow, that I didn't think of it that way. That's actually really fascinating. But if you're doing the experiments and saying, man, all of a sudden it shoots all the ammo, like, shit, man, manufacturers could take advantage of something like that too. Like, say, like, look, our gun, odds are you'll find good ammo faster with a
yeah.
24-inch
And,
barrel.
during COVID and all that, it was impossible to find rimfire ammo. It just was. It was hard to find any
Mhm.
ammo. But just to get anything that shot halfway decently, I mean, could you go out there with CCI standard velocity? You can, and I've actually seen some of that stuff shoot halfway decently. But if you want to
Hmm.
compete at the top level, I mean, you need ammunition. This is the standard we go by. This is something that I'm not going to say I invented it, but I will not recommend a rifle to anyone and that particular lot number. If they want to compete at the top level, their rifle, their rimfire needs to be able to hold a 10-shot group at 100 yards and keep it at an inch or less. One of them, or, basically, that's the standard. If you base it off
Hmm.
the size of the targets, if you can't do that, you're going to start dropping points unnecessarily. That's if you do that's off of a bench or off prone, but now you start adding positional to that, and you know how that goes. That's why you have the craft challenge. You start
Hmm.
adding, all right, well, now I'm kneeling, or now you know, I'm standing off the top of this barricade. Can you, as a shooter, even hold a minute? Maybe, maybe
Hmm.
not. I mean, your tests show exactly what you can expect.
Right.
You can have the best rifle in the world, but your fundamentals have to be solid, or it doesn't matter. I mean, you might get lucky and sling one in there, but what is your margin of error in this position?
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Right. So with that, what kind of standard deviations do you see in these ammo, and is it enough with the vertical of the targets to keep
it's
it
huge.
at those
It's huge.
distances?
Yeah. So if you've got a really, really good lot of ammunition, typically you're going to see like a really good lot, like the best I've seen would be 3 to about 6 SD. Okay. But
Uh-huh.
you can get wild with it and you can get way up there, 20s or higher. And the thing is that distance, when you're trying to come up with I did a video on the Kestrel because it's completely different than centerfire rifle. You're going to be doing DSF very, very close. Okay. So doing your drop scale factor with the rimfire is very, very important, but try to do all of that data and get all that data with a magneto speed attached to your rifle. So if you're shooting for a water line, don't expect to hit that water line every time at 300 yards. You're going to look at it and you're going to be 2 inches high, and then you'll be 4 inches low. Then you'll have one on the water line, and you've got to be looking at that magneto speed to say, oh, okay, well, that one was a little bit fast. All right. Because it doesn't take much loss in velocity on a 22 to now you're 4, 8, 10 inches low. We don't really control those bullets. Those bullets we got to shoot what we've got, and you're not going to load it. You just got to accept what it is. Now, it's good to see that companies are starting to really pay attention to rimfire, not only the manufacturers, but also the manufacturers of ammunition. Lapua just came out with long range and super long range, and we were some of the first ones to get that. And what I've seen in all my rifles is the SDs are quite a bit higher than my normal Center X ammunition. It's still really good, but yeah, it's a 10, 12 SD in my rifles, whereas my other stuff shoots somewhere between 6 and 8. It's good enough. I'm not going to switch ammo because of it. It's just a different ammo.
Yeah, I haven't messed around
with it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm hoping to start shooting the air guns as some testing and some competitions. And you can shoot air guns at the rimfire matches. So I want to explore that a little bit this year once I can shoot again. I like the idea
to do that as well. And if you're talking about Utah, Utah air guns, I think. And there's another one. Was it FX or something?
That's they manufacture guns.
Manufacturer.
Yep. Yeah. Utah air guns. What they do is they pull in all the parts and all the manufacturers and suppliers, and then they custom build your system to what you're going to do. So they take chassis. They might take an MPA chassis or whatever MDT. I got one behind me. And they'll put that air gun into this system and configure it for you. And it's pretty amazing what they do there. I went to their shop and saw the guys. They configure these wild systems, and then they tune it, and they're unbelievable. I mean, like some of them were shooting like 10, 20 shot groups at hundreds of yards and being, at an MOA.
And they are more consistent with the new with the regulation systems that they do. They're more consistent than any 22 rimfire is going to be. I mean, you can shoot 10 shots and have like an extreme spread of like 1 foot per second. It's insane. I know some people around here that compete in the big championship where they have these huge purses, and I'd like to get one. I'd like to, I've never even reviewed one or anything like that on the channel because it's not something that I know much about, but these guys are shooting 300, 400, 500 yards with these things. They're extremely consistent. Yeah.
Right. But I also don't know that much, and I would need to get firsthand familiarity with it because it's just massively fascinating. And just like everything else that you mentioned, it's going to cost you the same as any rifle to build it. Afterwards, I think there's a savings with the fact that the ammo is super cheap and it's just air, but you got to fill up the tanks and keep
you got to have a compressor
pressurized, right, or go to a shop that you can fill up other tanks, and so there's a lot of equipment that you're not just going to go do the Sniper Adventure Challenge with an air gun,
no,
because of the maintenance of stuff like that. But I'm hoping to make it to the big match that they have in Utah this summer once I get kind of shooting this thing and familiar with it, because it just, I don't know, I like it, and the idea of precision and accuracy and how they work. It's fascinating, and I'm excited. I'm really excited because for those fundamentals, other than recoil management, you can really test that precision and work those separately, and then try to go to these matches and do well. So yeah, man, I'm super excited. Um, I think that I'll have more to say when I when I've got more time behind them. But man, going out to Utah Air Guns was amazing because they laid out 6 different setups and they had paper set up on their indoor range, and you could test all these systems and see how they worked. And they don't have barrels like, or some of the rifles have standard kind of barrels, but some of them have this sleeve.
Sleeve.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so, but they don't have like a barrel life, so you could shoot them forever. But you're like, okay, well, I want to go from 22
To
to
a
a
slug.
6 mil, yeah, or a 50. You
Yeah.
could go to a 50 cal. You just pull it out, put it in a new sleeve. Now you got a 50 cal. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, and that kind of just that's fascinating to me. So I'm excited
Yeah. It's
anyway
something that
to
I
get
might
it.
try one day, but I also know that it's not inexpensive, so
Right,
that
right,
might hold me
right.
off for a little bit.
If I get set up though, and we make it to, I don't know if I'll be cleared to shoot by the doctors for the Burris this year, but I do plan on being
Yeah.
at Team Safari. And if I've got
Okay.
the setup, I'll just bring it with me to Team Safari in the truck, and we can screw around after, in the middle of stages and stuff like that. If you want, we can
Yeah. Yeah,
just
for sure. I'm
screw
planning
around with
on
it.
making the CD match, but have you ever heard of the Lawing brothers? They're really young. They shoot for F1, sponsored by
Mm-mm,
EOTech. They shoot a
mm-mm.
lot of the matches around here. Just unbelievable. I'm not going to call them kids, but I've been watching them grow up, as kids, and they just dominate. They're just incredible. But they got into air guns a couple years ago, and I think Brady, the oldest one, I think he won one of the events out there, and he either won like 25,000 or something like that. It was like 20 something $1,000. He was on a TV show, and they did the air gun thing, and he was telling me the level of precision those things have, and he's like, "You've got to do it. You've got to try it." And that kind of set a fire under me to at least get some knowledge about it, but I just don't have any. I just haven't gone down that path yet.
Yeah, you got to reach out to the Utah Air Guns guys, because I think that's just the hub of knowledge, and they have everybody that works there. They came out and shot, and it's like, holy
Yeah.
crap, they were really just nailing these bug hole groups. And I got it. I was like, shit, this thing doesn't move at all, and because of that, I'm like, wow, I got to practice a little bit here, and they knew about the because you have to tune it very carefully, and I
Yes.
mean this isn't something, but not only the pressure to the round, but also the time that the air is released into the chamber controls
Yes.
it. So you got all these different things, and they're timing it just right. But once they've tuned it, their rifles were incredibly precise, and
Yeah.
that's
Brady
pretty
was telling
freaking
me
awesome.
exactly that. He was telling me about how you have to tune them. And I don't know, it almost
Mhm.
seems like shooting a real gun's a little easier.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But once it's done, it just stays like that.
Yeah.
They knew how to do it, so they just brought out the tuned rifles, and I just shot it. But not only were they able to just shoot amazingly well, all these different systems, they just made it work for that ammo. So you didn't, once it was set, you're set. And I think they
Yeah.
do that for their customers. Like, all right, we're gonna tune it for you, get it all set. You just, let it rip when you get it. And I don't
Yeah.
know. It's fun. I mean, shooting anything is fun, and then learning about the
Exactly.
ballistics and what. Yeah, and
And,
it's
like, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but like, it's funny how much has changed in rimfire over the last couple of years. It's like you can't even go to a match now where it seems like 90% of the field isn't running some type of tuner. I'm not going to get into the tuner wars or anything else with you,
yeah,
but I've done enough testing to where I typically don't run a tuner. I've tried them. I've played around with some of the groups and everything else, but um, I think I own one gun with a tuner on it, and honestly, that setting will never change because it shoots best in that setting. Just set it, leave it alone, don't touch it again. But
mhm.
as far as tuning for loads, I feel like I'm just chasing something that doesn't have that repeatability. Like if you set it on position one with this ammo, it doesn't mean that it's going to shoot the best at position one. If you go to five and then go back to one, now all of a sudden the group's big again. So I don't even know what to think about that, but it's funny how the sports change from the different length barrels to the heavier guns. I mean, a lot of the guys that I'm seeing are running 20 plus pound 22 long rifles. which is crazy. Yeah. I talked to Matt the other day. I think his is at 24 pounds. It's like, dude, that's a little too heavy. He's like, I think I might take a weight or two out of it. And, and then you see these guys running, I've got an MPA matrix chassis for my centerfire now. I couldn't think of even running that on a Rimfire, just because the balance is so different from a Rimfire. But, we're running 120 straight tapers and these big truck axles on a little 22.
Yeah. That's cool though. But again, like,
it's a lot of fun.
if it kind of like on Surviving Man, there's, not that the, a lot of the things that we had to shoot weren't good, but the idea but I like the idea of here's a rifle or here's a pistol or here's a weapon, here's something that shoots, pick it up and know how to use it and understand the context and do that. Like that is pretty cool. Like that would be a good competition. It would be impossible to make probably, but the idea that like you don't know what you're going to get and you're presented with a scenario and a firearm and you have to solve the problem and know, okay, there's 50 steel heads and I got a pistol I got to do for speed. I can do that. And then, oh shoot, here's a bolt gun. Now you got to shoot 800 yards. I know how to do that, and here's a gas gun and close and then far and portholes. And I love the idea of here's this weapon system. Here's an application that it's intended for. Can you do it at the level that, at a standard that is across the board? Like, man, that seems perfect, right? And
that'd be a lot of fun. But that sounds like Call of Duty. It's like, no, I don't want this one. No, I'll take this one. You can run with it. I'm not a big gamer, but I've seen enough of it, and I've got kids and everything else. And I think that would be awesome. The only thing that I would ask is the stuff is at least decently sighted in. So
right. I mean, but I think that's I don't know.
That's part of it.
Yeah, it seems pretty cool. Like, or you have to bring them, like, but again, like the cost and the reality of that. But just personally, and I feel like you're the same way. It's the idea of getting familiar with what, how, why, and what makes this work and why do we test it this way? And is there other stuff we could do with it? And it's cool that people are always pushing that, like with the 22s, shooting them further, or with the PRS, shorter time, smaller targets, or positional stuff where you still maintain those fundamentals, or biathlon. I'm fascinated with biathlon. The idea that you have 100 people that could all win, and they're all shooting with their heart rates at 180, and what separates them all is mistakes. They're all fast, they're all fit, and they can all win. But you start making subtle mistakes, and it's like, man, the idea that literally 100 people at this match could all win. They all have the skill, the ability, and yet what's going to separate them is they're doing this crazy shit where now they're going to start making mistakes. I love that. Like, okay, let's make this complicated enough because we're all at a high level. Like, is that going to start to come into the precision world at PRS or PRS Rimfire? Like, look, if you take the top shooters, they're all pretty amazing. Let's set a course of fire where we know they could all win, but complicated enough where it's sorted by mistakes, rather than just timing or the target or whatever. Like, I think that shows that like the biathlon has had so much testing, and I think you see that with pistol shooting. Like, the level of pistol shooters out there is so incredibly high that it's not as simple, right? It's just so refined that it's a mistake thing or subconscious. It's past all of the thought stuff, and I think in a lot of these disciplines that are still out there now, like PRS, Rimfire, there's still that conscious. We're still thinking our way through it, and that's why you see people continuing to get better, in a mound, but they haven't massed up at the top. Once they mass up at the top, how are you going to separate them? And then it's like, man, that's where it becomes like the master, grandmaster, whatever. And I think it's still headed there, but that opens up a lot of crazy opportunities for spin-offs. And
Yeah, there was a match. I'm going to leave it unnamed, but there was a big match they held in, I'll just say, in the East Coast, and 8 people cleaned the entire match in a rimfire match. And so they all won, and it all came down to the one tiebreaker stage. That's what it came down to. And so, just think how sucky that would be to actually shoot a perfect clean for an entire match for the entire day. And just because you had one little fumble or one little thing on your speed stage, now all of a sudden you went from first place to 8th place and you did no wrong. It was just that
yeah,
speed stage. But
yeah,
no,
that
that
would
actually
bug me a
happened
little bit,
here.
but
Yeah, that
that's
actually
crazy.
happened. 8 people cleaned it. And there were a lot of complaints. They said, well, you need a stage or two that's really going to separate that, where it's almost impossible to get a clean on it. And so they did change it up, and it's turned into a better match. You can't have that many people cleaning a match. It
Right,
doesn't work well.
right, right, right,
But
right.
no,
But
it's been I'd say of all the years I've been shooting, it's awesome, all the different disciplines you can do now. And I don't know, with all the long range, it's like everybody's a long range shooter now. Everybody's into it, or they want to get into it.
right, right,
It's
right.
so easy.
Well, it's addicting.
Plug
Yeah, it's super
plug
easy
and
to get
play.
into, and it's addicting. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's growing and changing, and I like that the new pockets that pop out like that really draws me. Like, oh, I want to try that too. I want and seems like that's always growing. And then the other ones like it's more in Texas, but the run and gun, gas gun precision stuff I haven't done enough of, but
That's picking
like
up
the
really
burst.
heavy
Yeah.
here. Yeah,
Hmm.
there are a lot of running guns. There's a place that I teach at here. It's an unbelievable range. It's called Big Ivy Silas Branch, and they own a lot of property, and it's a unique venue in that there's more wind there than any other place I've ever shot at, especially on the East Coast. And when I hold classes out there, I mean, it's nothing at 1,000 yards to be holding 5, 6 mils. Last class I taught, they were having to hold like 6 mils with their 6 millimeter because you're shooting mountaintop to mountaintop. And the way the
Oh yeah.
wind comes through the valley, you don't really have the indicators like foliage and things like that. You're trying to focus in on mirage, but you're literally mountaintop to mountaintop. And it's not like that the whole way, because as I teach the class, we start at the bottom, and you're getting your chronograph speeds and your zeros out to 200, but then everybody has to hop in side by sides, and you go up to the next station. The next station, you can engage targets from like 400 to about 7. But that's it. You can't go further, and you can't shoot any closer. But then you got to go up to the next station. Then the next station, you can do like 600 to 890. And then you got to go to the very top of the mountain. And then that is 700 to like 1,000. So it's a really unique place. It's very tough to shoot out there. It really is. But you learn so much just because it's not as easy as a little flat range where you can see all the grass and everything else.
Hmm.
It's really cool, but they're getting ready to do a running gun out there. Now, I couldn't imagine doing a running gun out there. And I actually talked to one of the guys that's putting this thing on, and I was like, you couldn't pay me to run up the side of that mountain. It's so steep that these side by sides, and they spend a tremendous amount of money putting these roads in, but they have to be in 4-wheel drive. They have to be in low. And when you're coming up the hills, it's like this just to get from one station to the next. I'm like, how are you going to do a running gun? And they're like,
Bear
I
crawl
think we're
running
going to take
gun.
it. Yeah. I said, what I've heard, and I don't know this for a fact, someone told me they're going to take everybody to the top and they can go down through the match.
Oh,
Well, they're going to blow out knees too, because I know how that is, especially when you're carrying gear. But it's better than the alternative of going up the hill. I couldn't imagine. That's probably some of that stuff that you do,
I
with
was
the
like, shit, that
sniper
sounds
adventure.
awesome.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm not
that
interested.
sounds fun. That seems awesome, man. Well, I mean,
But
let me know how it goes. Give some kind of report or AAR if you go watch it, or if anybody does it. I'd be fascinated. This year my
yeah, I'm going to
body's
be out
kind
of
of
the
out of
country when
commission,
they're.
but
Yeah, I'm going to be out of the country when they're doing that match, because I was trying to find out the dates and everything else. And unfortunately, I'm going to do some traveling this summer. I think after Blade Show, I'm gonna head out to Jordan, and then probably Cairo, and then some other places, and I'll be gone for a little while. But just do some things that I wanted to do that I haven't been able to do in a while, and I'm going to miss quite a few matches because of that. But it's okay. It's okay. There's plenty in the fall and spring.
Heck
And
yeah. Man, my whole year was blown because of this back thing. So I could, I mean,
Yeah.
shit, like, it's just, you gotta sometimes just say, like, you know what? Like, you gotta travel. That's awesome. I gotta recover. That's awesome. Next year, I'll be back 100%. But
How many
once
surgeries
I'm
have you
cleared,
had?
a lot, probably 18,
Yeah. I
18
can't imagine.
orthopedic surgeries from trauma and stuff. But this one
Yeah, you're still
is unusual
a
because,
cyborg.
yeah, man, just getting more metal, but this one has been weird. Like, unlike knees, or I got bolts in my neck, and I got a rebuilt shoulder, and some stuff that was moved around in my chest, and this one is weird just because on your lower back, you can't twist or bend, and the bone has to heal, but you also can't have weight. So being restricted to only holding 18 pounds, and then having to wait 4 months to see if the bone is growing before, I mean, it's really unusual.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done a lot of recoveries from surgeries, but this one is like, I can walk. That's it, and
So is that what you're doing for exercise? You're just walking,
yeah,
staying in shape?
yeah. I walk, like, they say, well, do more frequent, shorter walks, but I end up walking like 6 to 10 miles a day cumulatively, just because, like, shit, that's all I can do. I can't.
Yeah.
Shit, but I mean, you don't think about it, but when you go to the grocery store, or you go, Costco or something like that, how often are you carrying more than 15 pounds? And it's, man, so I have to make like 5 or 6 trips between the car and my
Yeah.
apartment. Like, this has been really weird. Um, this has been a really weird experience. It's pretty bizarre, but I do think that the prognosis is good, and I should be able to be back to 100% with no restrictions or limitations. So,
Yeah, we're not
my
spring
plan.
chickens anymore, Chris.
No, no, we're not. But I do want to be able to get back. I don't know if the Sniper Adventure Challenge. I like new things, but I've got a couple physical outlets that I'd like to train for. Um,
Hmm.
and other than shooting, but with the shooting stuff, I really want to try the um the air gun stuff, and then I would like to get PRS points. I was hoping to do that this year. I'll do that next year, and then the running guns, and kind of keep exploring out into those territories. And then I would really, really like the precision gas gun stuff to pick up. So I'm hoping that maybe next year we'll be able to start trying to be shoulder to shoulder with bolt guns with gas guns. And so I would probably shoot gas guns at PRS too, and the stuff where you're not quite as competitive, but it's just about there. Like, maybe they'll have the arcs tuned up for that. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we'll keep chatting about it, but it's hard to make
Yeah.
those plans. And this year I had a lot of plans that I had to just basically shelf. So next year that's gonna be the deal.
You going to try to do
but anyway,
Snipers Unknown this year?
I don't know when it is. I
It's in
won't be able to
October.
shoot till, that it might work. Hit me up with the dates, because by October I should be shooting again.
Yeah, they're going to hold
uh,
it at the Clinton House this year, I believe, which they haven't done that in a while because the last couple had been at GTI. That's when I saw you out there. And I didn't shoot it last year because my partner blew his knee out. So it was like, no, we had to cancel last minute. But we might shoot it again this year. I'm not sure. Like I said, Clinton House is nice because it's natural terrain. While GTI is awesome, you can't convey how awesome that place is. After about 2 years, it's time to move on to a different venue, I think. So we'll see how it goes.
right. I'll look into it. By the fall I should be able to shoot it. The problem is, like, leagues and seasons are kind of washed out. I'm going to be helping out at Guardians after the Washington one.
Okay.
So I'll be involved with the Guardian matches on the train up day. And then just trying to fill in some competitions, and while I'm getting back in shape, just to reach
Yeah.
up, because I really haven't shot much since September, and just try to get back on it. I'm not worried. I mean, time off is time off. You know what I mean? Like, it comes back fast, but it's really fun, and I'm looking forward to that fun and seeing friends and doing that stuff.
Yeah, it's always
But I
good
appreciate you
catching up
coming
for
on.
sure.
I gotta do like a call to my kiddos for
Okay.
bedtime and figure things out. But man, it was so fun talking to you. I want to get you back on and keep picking your brains about. I want to pick your brains about pistols and
Yeah.
everything that you do. So maybe we can kind of like do this more often. Like once a
Yeah,
month, we'll do
absolutely.
a
Yeah, likewise.
chat with Ray.
This turned into more of a catching up type podcast than it was talking about shooting, but it was fun.
Yeah, man, I don't care. I mean, I consider you a good shooting friend, and we've had a lot of fun together. So it's just nice to chat.
Likewise.
Man, I've been isolated, and it's nice to be able to just catch up with people and see your face.
For
I
sure.
think that's cool,
Likewise.
man.
But
I'm
I'll
really
come on
excited.
anytime you want, and let me know. Just stay in touch.
Thank you. Heck yeah, man.
Yes, you
All
take
right, well,
care.
you have a good night.
See you. You as well.
Bye.
Bye.